Welcome to SMCC Online. We hope that regardless of where you're at in your faith journey, that this service will be helpful and hopeful for you. If you want to learn more about SMCC or maybe look into attending a physical location in Draper, South Jordan, or Lehigh, head to our website, smccutah.org, for times and directions. We've created a safer environment for everyone during this unusual season of church life. Every fall we kick off with a brand new series, and that is happening today. But before we get into that, let's sing a song that expresses our desire to take our next steps with Jesus.
We're ready at the line looking out. We're looking out to all that's ahead. When every heart confesses your name, we're pressing on towards that day. We're never gonna stop. We're never gonna stop. We're letting go of every mistake. We're throwing off the chains of restraint. And all that will remain, a passion for your name, burning as we run this race. We're never gonna stop. We're never gonna stop. We're never gonna stop. We're never gonna stop. We are running. We're chasing after all that you are. We are running. 'Cause all that you are is all that we want now. Every stride is taken in faith. Every step compelled by your grace. We're taking up our cross, no matter what the cost. We give it all to go your way. We're never gonna stop. We're never gonna stop. We are running. We're chasing after all that you are. We are running. 'Cause all that you are is all that we want. We're running. We're chasing after all that you are. We are running. 'Cause all that you are is all that we want now. Oh, onwards we draw towards your light. Desperate we seek to know you more and more. Further we look beyond ourselves to your love, to your love. Onwards we draw towards your light. Desperate we seek to know you more and more. Further we look beyond ourselves to your love, to your love. We are running. We're chasing after all that you are. We are running. 'Cause all that you are is all that we want. We're running. We're chasing after all that you are. We are running. 'Cause all that you are is all that we want now.
As we begin this new series called Reality Check, I wonder how many of you have ever experienced a reality check moment or season in your life. Those moments that wake you up and focus your life again. I have. In 2007, I was confronted with the reality of global poverty, which took me on a theological and very practical journey into the causes and cures for poverty-stricken communities. I discovered that my understanding of my own faith was truncated, that the implications of obeying Jesus went beyond getting people spiritually right with God, as essential as that is, but that the gospel and a biblical worldview are catalysts for the flourishing of people, cultures, and nations. A reality check is an occasion to be reminded of, or to discover for the first time, the way things really are. And we hope that this 6-week series will be that for all of us. Let's dive into the intro to this series now.
Hey, I'm Eric. I'm one of the teaching pastors here at SMCC, which means I get to spend the best hours of my day working on helpful and hopeful messages like this. It really is a privilege and a pleasure to get to do that. If you're tuning in online during this unique season, thanks so much for tuning in with us. And if you're at the Lehigh location today, I'm so glad I get to connect with you in this way. I had a great time connecting with you in person last week, and I'm so glad I can connect in this way with you this week. Now, over the last few months, I've noticed this image that's been popping up all over my digital world. I'm curious and I'm wondering if you've seen this picture as well. It looks like this. Oh, apparently they're not going to let us see it today. They don't want to show it. No, I'm kidding. This is actually what I want you to see. Have you seen this before? It says false information reviewed by independent fact checkers. Apparently, there are fact checkers out there, whoever they may be and whoever they may work for, helping us discover what's real and discover what's false. Have you seen this before? See, every day we face an onslaught of stories and breaking news and ideas and perspectives and opinions about what's real and what's really going on in our world. And never before have I been more confused about who is telling me the truth. Never before have I been more confused about who is telling me what's real. And maybe you can relate with that. And this should concern us. This should concern us greatly. And here's why. Nothing is more important than knowing reality. Nothing is more important than knowing reality. And I'm convinced right now it's easier than ever to be out of touch with reality. And I think, and I could be wrong, but I think our culture in many ways has lost touch with reality. Now, let's quickly define reality so that we are all on the same page today. Here's what reality is. Reality is the way things actually are. The way things actually are. So truth is that which corresponds to reality. Truth is that which corresponds to the way things actually are. And there are many stories out there right now about the way things actually are. Many stories, many philosophies, many perspectives and beliefs out there right now about the way things actually really are. And those ideas, stories, perspectives, and beliefs, they compete with each other. In fact, they combat each other. They contradict each other. So because of that, we have to check reality often. And because nothing is more important than living in reality, we thought at SMCC it was the perfect time for a reality check. So, welcome to our big fall series called Reality Check. How the world began, how it ends, and everything important in between. And in this series, we want to help you discover what's real in a world that is attempting to fact check everything. Now, have you ever been through a reality check moment before? I'm talking about one of those moments that really served as a wake-up call in your life, a wake-up call that sort of recentered you again on the things that were most important, on the things that were true. I've had a few moments like that. One of those moments was my first semester of college. I went through high school, got good grades, skated by with ease, and then I showed up to community college first semester, and I bombed. It was a strong reality check. And to be specific, I bombed chemistry. I still, to this day, cannot balance a chemical equation. It was such a strong reality check that I switched from pre-med to human development. Have you gone through a reality check moment like that? I mean, maybe it was the birth of a child, maybe it was a layoff or a financial crisis, perhaps it was a health crisis. I think we've all gone through some reality check moments. Now, Sometimes in life, circumstances push us into reality check moments, but sometimes wise people purposefully check reality because they know that living in reality, living aligned with what's true, is a way to live that sets us up to thrive. So in this series, we really do want to talk about all of it. In this series, we want to move towards reality together, knowing that it will always cost us if we believe a lie. No one wants to believe a lie. Now, throughout our lives, we will hear many stories. We will have many stories, perspectives, and beliefs about the way the world is. But there is one story that is the story of reality. And this brings us today to the thesis, the big idea for the series. And I think this thesis might be a little startling and a little shocking to some. Here's our thesis for the next 6 weeks. Christianity is the story of reality. Christianity is the story of reality. To say it another way, Christianity is the best explanation for the way things are. Now, when we say story, we don't mean something that was made up. We don't mean something that's fictitious. What we mean by story is an account of what's real, an account of what's really going on. And so Christianity is a story in the sense that it has a beginning. It's moving along towards a grand finale. There's some conflict in the middle between good and evil. It's going to reach a climax. Something incredible has happened, and then it's going to lean over into this great resolution. And in that sense, Christianity, it really is the story of reality. And so over the next 6 weeks, we want to help you see, we want to help as many people as possible see that Christianity is the account of the way things really are. Now, as we begin this series, I want to let you know about something. This series has been inspired by an incredible book. The book is called The Story of Reality. It's written by Greg Kokel. Many of us on staff have read this book, and I've found this book personally to be one of the best books that I've ever read. So you can pick this up in the lobby today at any one of our locations, or you can jump online, jump on Amazon, and pick it up as well. Now, additionally, a couple weeks ago, we launched this library of content called Right Now Media. You can find the link to that under the resources page on our website. But in Right Now Media, the author, Greg Kokel, for 6 weeks is leading a discussion that's perfect for your small group, or a discussion that's perfect for your group of friends to go along with this series. So we hope you will take advantage of those two resources to get the most out of this series, Reality Check. Now, when I say that Christianity is the story of reality, I don't expect everybody to agree with that statement, and that's fine. But this next point, I think, is something we can all agree upon, and it's this right here. You already have a story you believe about reality. We all have a story that we believe about reality. We have to have a story to get through life and to make sense of everything that we're seeing in our world. So atheists and religious people alike are united by the fact that they all have a story about reality. So something like this: hey, we should all just be good people. I mean, just be a good person. If you think that, that's just part of the story that you believe about reality. If you think, you know what, our good should just outweigh our bad, that's part of the story that you believe about reality. Maybe your story is a story of evolution and natural selection. That's all a part of your story of reality. And when you say something like, you know what, I just think, or as long as we just, or the main thing is, whenever you say those types of phrases, you are sharing a part of what you believe the story of reality actually is. So, every religion, every philosophy, every worldview, every approach to life is trying to make sense of what we see in the world. It's trying to order the beliefs and tell a story about how those beliefs fit together and order themselves together. Every one of those worldviews is trying to make sense of what we see in reality. So every story of reality, every philosophy, every worldview, every perspective, even if they differ, have 4 key ingredients. And here they are. 4 elements of every worldview, or of every story or explanation or account of the way things are. Here's the first one: creation. Now, maybe you wouldn't want to use that term, but this is how things began. every story has an understanding of how things began. Here's the second part of every worldview or story. Fall. Maybe once again you wouldn't use that word, but something went wrong. And there's an explanation of what went wrong in everybody's story. Here's the third part. Redemption. And maybe once again you wouldn't use that word, but really it's the solution to the wrong. The solution to the wrong. So how things began, why things are bad, something went wrong, and now there's a solution to the wrong. And here's the fourth, restoration. What will the world be like after redemption, or what will the world be like after the solution to the wrong? Now, our stories, we might not all agree on them, but we all have these parts in our story. Every story or explanation of reality has these four major markers in it. Now, here's what happens next. For most of us, our stories have bits and pieces of other stories mixed into them. I like to think of it as a puzzle. Our story has puzzle pieces in it, but our stories often have pieces from other puzzles built into our story. So, Christianity is a story with a lot of different pieces to it. If we think of it as a puzzle, it's a puzzle with a lot of different pieces. I mean, there's creation, and there's Moses, and there's the law, and there's the Old Testament, and there's Noah, and there's the flood, and there's the temples, and there's the parting of the sea. These are all pieces in the puzzle. There's the New Testament, there's Jesus, there's sacrifice, there's grace, there's the cross, there's the book of Revelation, there's the end times. There's all these pieces inside of the puzzle. Now, for many of us, here's what happens. Just like when you try to put together any puzzle, when you have pieces from another puzzle mixed in, it throws everything off very quickly. And I think for many of us, our story or our explanation of the way the world is kind of like this. All the pieces got dumped out on the floor from a couple different puzzles, and we are trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together. And this is why it is very common for you to hear someone say something like this. Maybe you've said this. You know what? All religions are basically the same. It's very common to hear that. And it's probably because one or two or three pieces from a couple different puzzles all look very similar. But if the entire puzzle is a 500-piece puzzle, 3 pieces doesn't really change much. It doesn't mean that they're very similar. I mean, there might be a couple pieces that are similar, but in the big picture, these puzzle pieces are very, very different. So throughout our lives, we have to find the pieces that don't fit and throw them aside so that we can put together the puzzle, put together the story of reality. So for example, grace and karma. Grace is getting better than you deserve. Karma is getting exactly what you do deserve. Those are pieces from 2 different puzzles. Reincarnation of Hinduism and the resurrection of Christianity. Those are pieces from different puzzles. And so throughout our lives, we need to know how to take out the pieces that don't fit and put the pieces that do fit together so that we have a coherent explanation of reality. So how do you put together a puzzle when the pieces are all jumbled up? Well, you step back, you look at the box, you look at the big picture. That's what this series really is all about. Now, at this point, before we go on any further, there's a question that some people might have as they listen to me today. And the question might be this. Yeah, but Eric, can we really know things at all? Eric, can we really know things at all? Like, Eric, you're talking about puzzles and pictures, but come on, can we really know what the big picture is? Can we know things at all? It's very common to hear somebody say, you know what, you have your truth and I have my truth, but come on, there is no absolute truth. There is no absolute story of reality. There is not one story that explains reality. Well, here's what you need to know. For the person who says that, you know what they're doing? They are giving their explanation and their story of reality. So by saying that there is no ultimate story of reality, they're actually just communicating their ultimate story of reality. This is a self-defeating concept. We know that we know things. Every time you do math and you get the right answer, you know that you know things. Every time you drive to a destination and you arrive there on purpose like you knew you would, you know that you can know things. So we can know what is real. So, is Christianity real? Is it real in the 2 + 2 = 4 is real sense? Is Christianity real like math is real? Well, it's going to take some time for us to explore that. It's going to take 6 weeks, in fact. But today, I simply want to begin with this introduction to reality with the way that a man named John in the first century introduced reality. In the first century, a man named John introduced his Jewish audience and his Greek audience to the concept of reality in a very fascinating way. John was a close friend of Jesus. He was an eyewitness to everything that happened to Jesus and everything that Jesus accomplished. He saw Jesus perform miracles. He saw Jesus teach. He saw Jesus crucified. He saw Jesus raised to life. He did not need a fact checker because he lived all of this. And so later on in his life, he would write his gospel, which is his explanation, his story of what really happened. And he begins his gospel like this. Take a look. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Now, this is very fascinating. John does not begin his gospel with once upon a time. He begins with in the beginning, because the story he's telling, it is not a made-up story. Now, this is very, very fascinating. We'll keep this passage up for a moment. John does not begin by using the name Jesus to talk about Jesus. Did you notice he used a different word? He used the word Word. This is very, very interesting. In this all-important introduction to John's gospel, he chooses a different way to introduce Jesus. For 600 years, Greek philosophers had debated this one concept, and the concept was the word logos. And that's the word we see with word. In the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God. He was with God in the beginning. And this is the Greek concept of logos, and we translate it here into word. And so for Greek thinkers and Greek philosophers, logos, it was the supernatural order behind the universe, behind the cosmos. And so famous Greek thinkers like Plato and Aristotle, they made a name for themselves. They made a reputation by waxing eloquently about this concept of logos. They would say that logos really was the force behind the universe, the immaterial principle behind the universe, really the ideal that everything else was connected to. So for the Greek thinkers during this time, logos or word really meant the organizing principle behind the universe, the principle behind everything else that organized everything else. This is what Greeks thought. But a Jewish thinker thought differently. A Jewish person saw this concept of word and thought about God's word. They saw logos in a different way. They saw it as God's creative and active work in the world. And John takes this idea and builds on it, because it means something different to him. Here's what it means to John. Jesus is the logic of God. Jesus is the logic of God. To put it into terms for today's message, we know what's real because of Jesus. In Jesus, we see reality fulfilled, and we see what's real revealed. This is what John is getting at in the first chapter of his gospel. Tim Keller talks about John 1 like this. Take a look. He's a famous author and pastor. He says, when the Gospel of John called Jesus Christ the Logos, it was revolutionary. For the Greeks, the claim that the universal cosmic order could be identified with an individual human being was insanity. It was an unprecedented idea that the power behind the world was love from a personal God. So John, he knows what he's doing. And of course, the Holy Spirit is directing what he writes. But John is building a bridge. He's building a bridge with his Greek audience to help them see who Jesus really was in terms that they would really understand. In Jesus, we see what's real. Jesus makes sense of everything else, and he makes life meaningful. But John's not done. John continues in his introduction to the gospel, and he says this. He says, through him, through the word, the logos, or Jesus, through Jesus, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life. It was life. And that life was the light of all mankind. So John is continuing to talk about what happened in the beginning, what really happened in the beginning, and who was behind everything that happened in the beginning. And he's saying Jesus is the source of life. In Jesus, we see what really happened. He is behind everything that has really happened. Now, this is very, very important. Listen, Christianity It is not a formula for being saved. It is a comprehensive account of the structure of reality. It is a rational and real history of the universe, a verifiable storyline of the cosmos. This is far different than the Christianity maybe you learned about on Wikipedia or the Christianity you experienced growing up in your grandma's church. Christianity, the story of reality, a comprehensive account of the way things really are. This is what John wants us to see as he introduces reality, as he introduces Jesus in his gospel. Now, have you ever come into a movie in the middle of the movie? You ever walked into the theater and you were a little late, or you turned on the TV, or you walked downstairs to see what your wife was watching and you came in at the middle of the movie? It's kind of a frustrating experience, isn't it? I've been there many, many times. My wife was into Downton Abbey for quite a while, and I'd always show up in the middle of an episode and I had no idea what was going on, and most of the time not much was going on. But anyways, when you show up to a show or a movie in the middle of the movie, it is very hard to understand what is going on, because you haven't seen the opening acts, you haven't been introduced to the main characters, and so you're watching in the middle and you're trying to understand what's going on. And I think for many of us, we were introduced to Christianity in this way. We were introduced to Christianity with the best part, for sure, which is that Jesus saves. But it was a little bit underwhelming. It wasn't very compelling because we weren't sure everything else that happened that led up to that moment. And so in this series, we want to get this right. In this series, we want to pull back and look at the big concepts of the story of reality. So what do we do with all of this? I mean, what do we do with all this Jesus is the logic of God stuff? I mean, what does this all mean? Well, let's just start with this right here. There's a reason for the way things are. There is a reason for the way things are. And we might not agree that Christianity is the story of reality, and that's fine. But I bet we would all agree that the world that we live in is wounded. Something has definitely gone wrong. You might believe that, and I believe that, and whatever we might believe about the ultimate story of life, that little part is in both of our stories. And that's what John talks about next. Look at what he goes on to talk about. He talks about what went wrong and what has happened next. He says, the light shines in the darkness. That somehow this darkness has entered into our world, and we'll talk about it in part 3 of this series. But Jesus has shown up into our world, and he is the light. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So Jesus has shown up onto the scene to do something about the darkness in our world. Now, I think most of us know there's a reason for the way things are. Most of us know that. It's why we intuitively ask one question constantly. And it's this question right here. Why? Why? I have a couple young kids, they're 8 and 5. Believe me, they never stop asking this question, why? But we ask this question too, don't we? It's one of the most natural questions we could ever ask. We want to know, why are things the way that they are? I mean, why is the world broken? And why am I here? And how should I live? I mean, why? Why should I live a certain way? This question is so important when it comes to understanding what's real. It's the why question. And when it comes to the why question, I think there are 3 types of people out there. 3 ways to connect with this question of why. Here they are. Here's the first. There are people who have found an answer for why. People who have found an answer to the why question. They know why the world is the way that it is. It's part of their story now. They know why. There's another group of people, and there's people who are still looking for an answer to why, still investigating, still looking for answers to the why question. But there's a third group of people. And these are people who decide there is no answer to the why question. And by the way, if you're in this third category, or you know someone who is, the day that you discover there is no answer to why, that is a dark day. Because you're saying there is no reason for the way that things are. And therefore, there's probably no reason for me being here. This part right here, number 3, if you get to a spot where you stop asking why, it can be a defeating place to live life. This series is for all 3 types of people. If you're in category 1, we want to encourage you and maybe reinforce your answer to why. If you're in category 2, we want to give reasonable answers to this tough question of why. And if you're in category 3, maybe we can just encourage you to ask the question of why again. Now, back to John's gospel for just a few moments. The Greek thinkers during John's time, they longed for airtight arguments and proofs for reality. That's what they were desperate for. But Christianity has given us one better than that. Instead of just arguments, Christianity has given us a person who can explain why things are the way they are, a person who can be known. Christianity is not an ideal, abstract concept. It is a person who really lived, who can be really known, a person who came to reveal what God is like really to us. And this person showed up in first century Palestine. And this is what John talks about next. Look at what he says next. The Word, or Jesus, Logos, became flesh, showed up on the scene in our world, and made his dwelling among us. Look what John says. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. In him we see that which corresponds to the way things really are. In him we know what is real. So in Jesus we have the facts of Christianity. In Jesus, we can verify Christianity. In Jesus, we know what is real. Through him, we can understand why things are the way that they are. Christianity is the best explanation for the way things are. Now, back to community college with me, first semester, for a moment. I also took, in addition to the chemistry class I barely passed, Spanish. And in Spanish class, the hope is to learn a foreign language, obviously. And if you've ever tried to learn a foreign language, you know something. When it comes to learning a foreign language, you don't usually start at the beginning of the dictionary, do you? No, we start with the big concepts and we build on those over time. And I think this too is the best way to learn Christianity. So that's what the next 6 weeks are about. We want to take the big concepts and build on them to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And those big concepts are what happened in the beginning. Be here next week as we talk about that. Then what went wrong and what is the solution and how do we fit into all of this? And how will this all end? Where is this all headed? That's what this series is all about. But to get the most out of the series, I have to challenge you with one thing. I think you need to make a commitment to something. It's a courageous commitment, but could you commit for the next 6 weeks to do this right here? Check your reality. A reality check is an occasion for which one is reminded of the way things really are. And going through a reality check can be very difficult, especially if we've come to enjoy the status quo and the comfort that it might bring. But nobody wants to believe a lie. So throughout our lives, on purpose, we must check our own reality. So over the next 6 weeks, let's do that together. Let's check reality because now we know that nothing is more important than knowing reality. Hey, would you pray with me? And then we're going to sing one more song. God, we thank you for this intellectual approach that John took, that you wanted him to take to the introduction to his gospel, where he explains Jesus in terms of logos, in terms of word, in terms of logic. That's really fascinating because what John is doing still speaks to us today. It tells us that in Jesus, we can make sense of what's real. We can make sense of the thing that orders all other things, and that is Jesus. So over the next 6 weeks, Jesus, I pray you'd help us ask the why question. I pray you'd help us step back and look at the big concepts of the world that we live in to see what story is the best story for explaining all of those things. And I pray that through this study together, we would come to see that Christianity, Jesus, what you have done is the best explanation for the way things really are. We pray all of this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Hey, we're going to sing a song right now that really does tell the story of Christianity. So listen to the words of this next song.
In the darkness, we were waiting without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. In the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till the stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death, and the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored, and the church of Christ was born. Then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not fade. For His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Oh, He resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Hey, thanks again for watching. If you've enjoyed today's message or you know someone who would, please share this message on social media. If we can send you a copy of the book Reality Check, email us at support@smccutah.org. If you want to help more and more people hear about the hope of Jesus in a time when the world desperately needs it, you can partner with us. Just go to smccutah.org/give. Don't miss next week as we head into part 2 of this series. We'll see you then.